January 30th, 1983. Shefty, I present for you John Riggins, who ran for 166 yards.
Can you imagine how popular John Riggins would be in today's day and age? Oh my, that guy was a character, and he was an unbelievable running back, and he ran over people. Don McNeil there on the way to the end zone. A great run, a great player, and really the glory days for the Washington franchise.
43-yard touchdown, iced it. Washington beat Miami 27-17. And again, it was Riggins who led the way, and he may come up a little later in the show when we talk about greatest postseason performances of all time. In the meantime, let's focus on the upcoming Super Bowl 59. Our next game is called Are You Convinced? So, Harry, a couple of years ago, Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes in this spot, or at least played him dead even. Indeed. Are you convinced Hurts can outplay the great Mahomes a week from Sunday?
I'm not convinced about this one. And I think it has more to do with Andy Reid being a head coach and Steve Spagnuolo as the defensive play caller, giving him 2 weeks. And I know he had 2 weeks the last time these two guys played against one another, but I think it's a larger sample size to try to exploit the deficiencies of Jalen Hurts' game when you look at Steve Spagnuolo. He's one of the big game defensive coordinators we've ever seen in the history of the game.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to have something in store for Hurts and company.
Well, look, the one thing Jalen Hurts didn't have 2 years ago was Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. And while they have always had a very effective running game because their offensive line is so good, and they've had good backs, I don't mean to diminish the backs they've had. Barkley's having the kind of season that we basically have never seen before. How much does that change the equation for what the defense is going to have to worry about and maybe open the door for Hurts to have a big day?
It changes a ton. You think about it, when they got Saquon Barkley, we all came on TV and said it's a luxury because they don't need him because the rushing attack was already prolific. We didn't know it could look like this with Saquon where you're rushing for 2,000 yards. So as a defense, you go in, and we keep saying it week after week since the playoffs have started, each defense is coming in with stop Saquon Barkley and fully
effectively. Mm-hmm. Do you expect him to do that again a week from Sunday?
I do, because it's a numbers game. When you're playing against Saquon Barkley, you got to commit bodies. You got to commit numbers. Because you know this, the number one thing defensively you got to do is what? Stop the run.
That's right.
If you don't stop the run, you have no chance. And so I expect Kansas City to sell out to stop Saquon. Who can guard A.J. Brown one-on-one? You got Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. Those are prime opportunities that Jalen Hurts is going to have in the passing game.
So let me turn to my receiver here, because there were so many times during that game where Tom Brady, doing the telecast, was pointing out, like, they've got man coverage on A.J. Brown over here. I mean, just throw it. And he did it several times, including that big fourth down play. Is that what you saw? I mean, the bottom line is you got man coverage on guys who cannot be guarded, man.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, with Spags as a defensive coordinator. You say to yourself, okay, let me force Jalen Hurts to throw this football in the middle of the field, because that's not his strength. We know A.J. Brown is going to run the go route. It was a time early in that ball game.
It's easy to say, but it feels to me like you would need like 13 guys on the field, because you got to put a whole bunch of them in the middle to stop Saquon Barkley. And tell me how it is you're forcing Jalen Hurts to throw the ball in the middle of the field.
So, number one, I remember Dan Orlovsky had a tape from the Green Bay Packers, right, and how they played man coverage. You play outside leverage, and you have guys inside waiting on them, whether that's a one robber from a safety, J-Mac, you know that, or a linebacker as a hole player. You funnel everything inside. Or you play zone coverage and try to force Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert to beat you inside with their routes.
And that's the game within the game. It sounds easy to what Harry
it's easier said than done.
Force the ball in the middle. And the issue is, if you're doing those type of things, you're now allowing something else in the game plan to open up. So when you talk about trying to do that and stopping A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside, you're dead.
Let's set it up with this full screen. All right, so we do a feature on Wednesday. Everyone loves the title. It's called D's Notes. And one of our notes yesterday was that Kansas City has played 18 playoff games going back to 2019, and they've allowed exactly 0 rushers to go for 100 yards. The last time they allowed a 100-yard rusher in a playoff game was the 2018 AFC Championship game, and that player was Sony Michel. So understanding that, D. Wood, are you convinced that Saquon Barkley will rush for over 100 yards and break that string?
Yes, I am.
Wow.
Because I don't think the Chiefs have faced a rushing attack like this. Between the personnel up front with their offensive line, between the personnel up front and the runner that the Philadelphia Eagles have, listen, we've seen games where they just stopped handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley because they've dominated so badly that they don't even have to rush him, the latter part of the game. So I remember the Houston Texans, they ran the ball for 150. They didn't have a rusher over 100, but they ran the ball. The Houston Texans ran the ball for 150 yards against that Kansas City Chiefs defense.
True.
This is the biggest difference between the Eagles this year and the Eagles from 2 years ago. I know that they've changed over the majority of their defense, and it's also a different defense that played the Chiefs the last time in the Super Bowl. But Saquon Barkley. And now you get to roll with one of the preeminent players in the game to give yourself a better chance time in a matchup that could help determine the winner of Super Bowl 59.
Yeah, Barkley needs 40-something, I should have it in my head, yards to have the most productive by yardage season in NFL history, meaning if you include the playoffs and the regular season, to have rushed for the most yards of anyone ever. So, J-Mac, that brings us to our final. Are you convinced? Because this came up earlier this week. Are you convinced that, candidly, the Eagles' defense is the key to this game, and it is more important for them winning than even Saquon?
Greeny, you really gonna ask me a question about the defense? There's a bear poop in the woods. Absolutely, the defense is more important. Defense wins championships, and you think about it, since the bye week, it's been this Eagles defense that has been the best in the NFL. It's the defense that allows the Eagles to play the game the way they do, running the ball. If they have a slow start, it's the defense keeping the opponent at bay that allows them to get going and get rolling. When you can run the football and play good defense, it shortens the game, and it allows Kellen Moore to call the game the way he does. So Vic Fangio and his unit are the reason that the Philadelphia Eagles are as good as they are.
You think so, D. Wood? I'm looking at that huge interior of that defensive line, which is as so good it's ridiculous. All those Georgia guys, like 800 pounds of them in the middle of that defensive line. Is that where this game ultimately is going to get decided?
I do. I think ultimately the Philadelphia Eagles defense is going to be the ultimate deciding factor in this winning. Who's blocking Jalen Carter? Mm-hmm. Like, you got to commit resources to blocking that man because no one's blocking him one-on-one. Then you got to deal with Nolan Smith and all those other guys that they have in their front. Plus, they rotate guys in there to keep those guys fresh. And so, you talk about Steve Spagnuolo being one of the preeminent, defensive coordinators. Vic Fangio is one of the preeminent defensive coordinators that we have seen in quite some time in our league. So this is going to be a great chess matchup.
I also believe when it comes to the wide receivers of the Kansas City Chiefs and the secondary of the Philadelphia Eagles, in my opinion, are the better group.
Yeah.
So we can't forget the guys on the back end, even though two of them might be rookies and they might be young players. The way they played, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, how they played this season, took this defense that was atrocious, especially in the pass game last year, to being one of the best in the league.
And that's the fun part about it, because Mahomes has beaten Fangio every time he's gone against him, whether that was the D coordinator or the head coach in Denver, and then when he was with the Miami Dolphins. So I look at this, when you talk about the chess match of it all, Fangio plays and he disguises everything. Every defense looks the same. If Mahomes and Reed know what you're going to play before the snap, they eat you up, and they did it against the Bills. So I'm looking to see how that kind of figures out throughout the course of this game.
And before everyone even gets to New Orleans,